Hi, everyone. Welcome to our another LJC event after, I think, a month break. So usual question, who is for the first time at LJC event? Few people. Do you know what LJC is about? Or you just randomly found, like, hey, looks cool, I will join, yes? So, or there is free pizza, so yeah, why not? And air conditioned, so why to be outside? But today is not that bad. Okay, so I will anyways talk a few minutes about it. Yes, but first of all, who am I and why I'm talking to you? Most of the people probably know it, but for those who don't know, my name is Marcin. I'm LJC events organizer. I joined LJC when I was still at university, I think about 10 years ago. Yeah, I decided a few years ago to be more involved, and this is result of my involvement. Yes, but this is not about me today. We have 4 speakers today. Round of applause for all of them. And the format is a bit different than we normally do. So we have Tom with the 45 minutes presentation. Tommy will talk about actually how to present. So we were taught why to not connect this with actually people who want to present, aspiring speakers, how to better, give them kind of like, maybe they learn from today's session from Tom as well. Probably I will learn as well. And we have 3 speakers with 10 to 15 minute sessions. They are aspiring speakers. For some of them, it is the first public presentation. LJC in the past was known from producing world quality speakers, and I hope this is like the first step. We're going back to this tradition, and we produce many more now. So it's Verasimo, Shabana, and Chris. They will talk after Tom. So as I say a few words about what London Java community is about. It has been founded like 17 years ago, and it's still going. The main reason is like to serve the software engineering community in London by organizing events such as this one. Unconference next week, Friday, is a full day event where you just create this agenda for the day. Basically, we start the day with the posting proposal so on the board, and then if people are interested to listen to your proposal, you just go to the room and talk for 30-45 minutes about the topic. Yes. If you can join, please do. It was a lot of effort to organize this. It's a whole day event. You will be fed, you will be keep hydrated. It's a great venue, and please, if you can join, just join. So far, we struggle a bit with signups. So other than events, we also have like the Slack channel where you can communicate. For example, when I joined, we have like Java 101 channel where I was spamming people with more experience about Java questions. Yes. So we are not very active over there, but yeah, if you have any question about the other events or the initiative, you can learn about, I don't know, conferences, other places to go. We post stuff like that on the Slack channel. We also contribute to open source projects. I'm involved also in Jakarta E, which I gave talk last month about. We also kind of like LJC was crucial to what is now Adoptium. How many of you know about Adoptium? No, not many. Okay, but yeah, LJC was basically how Adoptium started. It was basically through LJC. If you want to know more, just ask me later, but I don't have time now. And we have also a lot of sister communities. One of them is actually aspiring speakers, which few are here. I recognize faces. Meet a mentor, you could call like Clojurians is kind of like sister, is spawned from LGC. What else I can think? Let's. I know there are many more, but I cannot remind myself now. Now, a few words about this meetup. So this is a community event organized by community for community, and to be a success, it belongs to you. And if you want to, this event to be successful, everything is your hands. But mainly, just show up. That's the first thing. And second one is, if you want to talk about anything, it doesn't have to be professional. As you probably already see, I'm not a professional speaker, but that's how we learn. So please submit your session at the link over there. There is a QR code, and to make it easier for you, I also printed this time, so you don't have to struggle, like making picture when I talk. So yes, if you have anything, can be 10 minutes, like we have sessions today, can be full 45 minutes talk. Just please submit it, and you will speak on one of these events. You will see like few of the people who will speak today. I actually kind of like encourage them to do it. Yes. Yeah. So sessions are recorded and streamed. So for the two things is like, if you don't want to be recorded and streamed to YouTube, don't go like over here, this area. And for the first time, I bought these laces like a few months ago, but I always forgot to bring them. If you don't want to be like on the pictures, just grab the lace, put on your neck, and we try to make sure to not include you on the photos. So yeah, I hope no one. Oh, actually, someone want to do it. I was thinking that is a stupid idea, but it looks like not. And yeah, call for aspiring speakers. I got already like the feedback that this format which we have today is awesome. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, to continue this, we need more people to submit. Again, 10-15 minutes talks are completely fine. But I found myself like, it's easier to actually make good 30 or 40 minutes presentation than 15, because it's much tougher. You have to think what you want to include. And if you forgot about something, you're kind of like screwed, because, if you have 40 minutes presentation and you forget about one slide, it's not a problem. But in 10 minutes presentation, if you forget one slide, that's what I did on the last year DevOps, actually. I forgot about one slide, and I finished my presentation after 10 minutes when I have 15. Feedback. Yeah, to make this events better, we need to hear from you. If you don't tell us what you like, what you don't like, maybe I talk too much, maybe I talk too little, maybe I talk too fast, maybe the venue is crap, maybe the air conditioning is not working properly. Just tell us. Yes, if you don't tell us, we don't know. So again, I make it a bit easier for you. They are printed QR code, and really I would appreciate, because that's something we are not the best to do feedback. Yes, for example, from the last event, I have only one person who did it, and which was about. So yeah, I presented this slide already, but the reason I want to present it is again because the stuff from the DevOps I actually brought today, and especially this one. So there will be some snacks to take, like stickers or whatever, but also this. We didn't thought it will be success on DevOps, but actually a lot of people, this is a like guest book. So if you fancy to write few words, awesome event, I hate it, stuff like that, I will just leave it somewhere here and you can do it. It's just a nice thing. Analog, yes. We all doing now this like social media stuff, but we try to go back and do analog way. Yeah, and few words. Oh, okay, I'm back. A few words about the other events organized by LJC next week. There will be in one of our sponsors' office, Discover. talk by Trisha and Sweta. Trisha actually started her. How many of you know Trisha? Few again. Okay, so Trisha is like worldwide recognized speaker, author, kind of like great person as well. And she started her career at LJC, the same as the people who we present here as an aspiring speaker, giving talks internally at LJC. And now she's, like the keynote presenter at the biggest conferences in the world. Yes. So again, success story of LJC, one of the success stories of LJC. As I mentioned already, summer conference is next week. Please, if you can attend, please do. And the one which I organized, or we organize from the same series, will be 24th of July in Couchbase, which is kind of like we organized many of those previously. So the same, please join if you want, if you like. And last but not least, the event supporters, RecWorks. RecWorks is a recruitment company which actually the Barry, who is the founder of LJC, also is founder of and owner of RecWorks. They are great to work with. I worked with them almost all my career. Never disappointed. They know difference between Java and JavaScript, which is already a big task for some recruiters. So, but they are a good one. And Redis, which we are in the office today, for the first time, hopefully not for the last. So yeah, great office, yes. Great food. What can I say more? But they are not only our host today, but also one of our sponsors. So yeah, we have few of them. And actually, I want to tell you what is the good about being the sponsor of LJC. What is good, I will tell you, is that I learned that Redis changed their branding. Because there is a lot of old logos, and when I try to find the new one, I mean, I was looking, and there was why they are different, yes? And actually, that's because you changed the branding, yes? So, yeah, I learned about it, yes? So just because you are sponsors of LJC. So, yeah, that's all my rambling. I want John just say a few words about where is the fire exit, who to follow, not me in the case of fire.
Fire exits, that's a cool area. Drinks and food companies, yourself as well. Another exit over here, but just sort of opposite in the hallway. There's a fire alarm like there as well. Yeah. Very cool meeting area.
So any kind of like question to me right now, but if not, that was the last slide. All announcement are done, so we can start the meaty part, which is Tom. I stop sharing. And you need mic, yes, I guess.
Is this one? Hello? Hello? Is that coming out?
No, not on this.
Oh, it's coming
will
out.
be only to the stream. Yes.
Someone else is sharing. I think I need to.
That's me, but let me. Okay, you should be free. Take. Yeah.
Wonderful stuff. Cool. Right. Right. Hello, London Java community. How are you all doing?
Woo!
That's the spirit. Wonderful stuff. Okay, so hi everyone. As you might have guessed from the enormous letters on the screen, my name is Tom, and for the last 10 years, I have been a solution architect. I probably don't need to explain what that means to the group, but pertinently, I have spent a lot of the last 10 years having to explain things to people. That's come in a few different forms. Some of them are long-form workshops, but very frequently it's supporting things like sales staff, where I've got a whole bunch of people in front of me, and I've got maybe an hour of their time, a little bit like we have today, and I've got to develop intuition with them. Okay, often about a technology, a concept, something of that sort of effect, maybe even a product, right? And the question is, how do I do this? A lot of the time it's doing talks, a bit like the one here. And there's a particular tool I end up having to look an awful, there's a particular tool I end up having to use an awful lot for that, which is PowerPoint. So who's ready to talk about PowerPoint? Again, that's the spirit. But yeah, I don't blame you for the sort of slightly lackluster reaction to that. I mean, let's face it, I don't think PowerPoint has ever been a word which anyone has ever said with a real like gusto, yeah, let's go get it. And it's understandable. So there's a little bit delayed. And it's understandable. I mean, let's face it, I think we've all probably sat through decks which look something like this. I personally had to sit through this at university. The course actually got cancelled afterwards because it got so many complaints, not just because of the slides, it's worth saying. And I had to give this one myself. Actually, I had to give the old version of this. This is the newer version, which is better. The old version was just undeserving of human eyes. But I mean, I think we're all aware that PowerPoint's got a pretty shoddy reputation, right? But the thing is, I don't actually think it deserves that reputation, odd as it sounds. I actually think that if you use correctly, it's your greatest secret weapon doing this, okay? And hear me out, right? What you have here is a canvas which you are in complete control of. Now, obviously, I'm sat here, I'm talking to you, but there are some things which are kind of difficult to articulate. Sometimes using visual metaphors are better. You can put diagrams up there, you can put charts to substantiate what you're saying. Even if you, like at basics, you can just put what I've set up to remind everybody what the major points are. Like, this is incredibly handy, and like I said, it's your greatest secret weapon if you're using it. So what I present to you guys today, slightly backwards from how one normally does a slide, is a talk called Introduction to Information Design. So this is a talk I've done in various stages throughout the last couple of years. And basically what it was born out of is seeing lots of PowerPoints like the ones we just saw on the last slide, but being a bit sort of annoyed that they keep sort of happening. And we all have to do stuff like this, so I figured why not just write a crash course in how to do this stuff, okay? Now, obviously, I've only got about 45 minutes here, so this is going to be a very like fast pitch thing. Feel free to pepper me with questions at the end of it. But without further ado, let's go. That said, let's stop before we go, okay? Now, stop before you make a PowerPoint, because I want to ask you, why are you doing this? And I appreciate some of you are probably sat here right now thinking, God, why am I doing this? Like, why am I listening to him talk about PowerPoints? But I don't mean this in that sense, although I don't blame you. I'm more in the sense of like, why are you doing a talk, okay? If you're in a position where you're going to sit down and do one, and I ask this because I have seen so many talks which were probably just better handouts or better blog posts and that sort of stuff. Like, and to put this to you, like, why not do one, right? You can read considerably faster than you can listen, right? Articles, if you sit down and write a well-done blog post, you can refine them an awful lot of times. You can add extra information to them. All the visual content I've mentioned, you can put video into them as well. It's much easier to do. And also, not for nothing, you can go at your own pace. You can't press pause on me. Well, you can, I suppose, and ask me questions to go back. But, you know, with a video, you can literally stop it and rewind. With an article, you can stop. If you just want to go through a particular tangent on something you don't understand, you can Google it, you can chat GPT it, whatever. You go at your own pace. With me, we're kind of doing it live, right? And especially if we're doing it on a sort of technology subject, if there's a little bit you don't understand, sure, you can grab the speaker and ask them a question. But if you're held up on that detail, you're kind of being dragged by the horse at that point, okay? That said, it's not all bad. I actually think talks are great. Probably wouldn't be doing one if I'd hated them completely. They're good for a few things. First of all, let's be honest, live speech is kind of more engaging than I'm just watching videos, right? Second one is, even though I've just kind of like, you know, dumbed down the idea you can ask questions, you do have someone who's theoretically at least knowledgeable about the subject who is talking to you. Whereas I think we've all punched things into ChatGPT and got quasi answers out which don't quite seem accurate. Also, this is really easily kept up to date. Again, I'm doing this live. I could write a blog post, but I think any of us who work for large corporates, even smaller ones, will know fully well that if you want to go and update that, there are so many hoops you've got to jump through, it's just not worth it. Unless it's on your own one, of course. But if something happens in the hour before my talk, I can incorporate that. I can tailor what's in the talk to the audience. We can mix and match it as per the situation, right? But I don't bring all of this up to compare and contrast talks versus videos and that sort of thing. What I bring this up is to make a point. Talks and PowerPoints are just one way to communicate a point to people, okay? And seriously, if you want to write an article, just write an article, okay? We have this habit in our culture of lionizing public speaking, and I don't mean to do down obviously the situation here, but it's okay to just write articles, okay? So we are here though to talk about slides and how to run through it. So how do we make good slides? The rough agenda we got today is I'm going to start off by giving a rough overview of doing structure and content. Again, what we're talking about here is mostly the design side of things, so I'm going to focus on that. Then we'll run through the design principles, and then very specifically, how do you do this with text, color, diagrams, and a little bit of page layout, basically. Some lovely dorky subjects. Right, so first things first though, or not first, if you're going to do a talk like this and make your PowerPoint, it should be the last thing you do. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but that's actually for a really good reason. Your slides are a function of your content, right? You can make the prettiest slides in the world, but if the content you're going to articulate with them isn't really substantive, it doesn't really get anything across, there's no point having them, right? So leave them to the end. There's another couple of points with this as well. The first one is that if you're not quite sure what slides you're going to do, what the points you're going to bring up, even if you do, you can spend ages on Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever, faffing around and making it look pretty. I know that I do, I love doing it, but it's a massive time sink. The other practical thing as well is that if you've got your script, which is what you want to say, and you make a change in it and you've got your slides, you've got to then go change them. The easiest slides to change are ones which do not exist, right? So start with your script. So if we're not starting with PowerPoint, what are the tools of choice, so to speak? Well, seriously, Word or a pen and paper. And if you don't believe that that's what I'm advocating rather here, this is what this talk looked like. So we've got word vomit here. That's how most of my talks start, not really refined. And then this goes through a few different Word documents until eventually we get this, which is nicely structured, all heavily indented with lots of color coding as well to help me memorize all of it, right? So without further ado, structure and content. I'm basically going to start off with 7 rules-ish to do sort of the major flow of your deck and then how you should run into them. So first things first, what's your end state, right? You know, going back to this thing of like, why are you doing this? But less on the existential, why am I listening to Tom Rabbit about PowerPoints, and more just in a general sense of you are trying to communicate something to people, right? Like talk, blog, whatever. The point is you've got an audience and you're trying to put a point to them. What's the end state you're trying to get to? And who are your audience for that matter? And what are they going to use this information for? So I often like service 2 different sorts of audiences. You've got business audiences who, if you're doing client projects with, they're going to need to take whatever it is and factor it into their roadmap more generally. Then you've got technical audiences who might want to understand the minutiae of that. How does it input with our stack? You might just be pitching like a new tool to your team, for instance. How does this work with our workflow? And this should influence what points are you going to need to cover to get there. And again, keeps harking back to who are your audience, right? Really big question with this is how much familiarity do they have with the subject? Again, if it's your own team, they might probably know quite a bit. You don't have to skip the preamble. Business audiences, I find you do have to go in for a bit of a preamble, usually something a bit more high level and intuitive, but they're not going to be familiar. Either way though, once you've got your points, you order them by dependency, is usually like I say. So I know there's a big sort of thing of, you know, shift left and address stuff really early in software engineering. I would actually advocate almost the opposite with this. You want to start lean and build up, right? If a point is not directly relevant to what you're trying to put forward here, and this is not to say put nothing onto your slides or make a point, but if like you're bringing up information which isn't like directly relevant, skip it and leave it. Even if it's essential to the wider point, just shift right on it almost, and just delay introducing ideas as long as possible. So the reason you want to do this is because the way you're going to structure your deck is what I call follow the next natural question, okay? You're going to bring up a point, and inevitably, you're not going to cover everything about it, but you're going to preempt, what is the audience going to guess, right? What's the next thing they're trying to think? And then that should be the next thing that leads you onto your next point. And what this gives is a nice intuitive flow to your deck, right? Obviously, you can't do this with every point and everything you're going to bring up, but trying to follow it as best as possible. So the next like tenant I have, answer the bloody question. seriously, the amount of decks I've sat through, particularly technical ones, which don't do this or go off on random tangents. One of the most egregious offenders of this actually was that thing that I pointed to earlier, which included an entire slide talking about how SHA-256 was derived from first principles. This, by the way, is in the context of how hashes are used in blockchain. I mean, sure, if you want to go implement your own instance of it, perhaps relevant, but I would contend that if you just want to understand what they're used for in terms of data integrity and tamper-proofing, not really relevant. You just need to understand that they're a fingerprint, really, and get the minutiae from that. Oh, just one thing on this before I go. Don't name drop and introduce jargon either. I know, again, this is a habit that sometimes I do this as well, but if you're going to bring things up, make sure that the whole audience are going to understand it first. Seriously, it doesn't sound clever if people are dropping the names of, I mean, again, egregious examples I've heard of this, like US security licenses that you have to get, and like obscure laws and that sort of stuff. It's like, it just makes the talk a little bit wasteful because everyone's standing around going, what is that? So next thing, analogies and familiar ideas. Much more useful with business audiences, but I would say even with fellow techies, it's quite handy as well. A really big thing for this, though, is that if you can relate ideas to what people know already, you have to spend less time building it up. They already understand those things intuitively, and this is what I'm getting at, the intuition here. So you can relate it to that. There's less time spent building things up in the first place. Oh, yeah. So the next one is, I think we've all, I imagine we've all built things like this before. So big solution diagram, right? Don't put this on screen at the same time. Okay, again, beautiful piece of work. I mean, I don't know, I just got this with Google. Beautiful piece of work, I'm sure, not disputing the majesty of the design, but this is a lot of stuff, right? I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking at it, okay? So my next rule is explain complex ideas and stages. Again, it sounds like I'm probably stating the obvious here, but this has not been put towards me in easy to consume chunks. And my eyes are darting around trying to work out where it is. I mean, granted, there's actually a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's still a massive diagram. That doesn't just apply to system diagrams, by the way, just any sort of concept, stage the information. And the final one is remember to recontextualize. So you should start out with the end state, like I said, and you're getting your points. But remind everybody what your end state is. Because ultimately, if you have this bird's eye view and the audience know what the bird's eye view is, when you're going off on points which seem a bit more tangential and a bit less relevant, it's much easier for them to ground it and work out where the North Star is and how it relates to that. So on the subject of that, to remind everybody, we're doing a talk about how you make PowerPoints. But to give a more serious thing of that, my goal at the end of this is I'd like everyone to have a sort of intuitive idea, roughly, of the do's and don'ts of how you actually design the decks, basically, what works and what doesn't, and why. Though, again, the big sort of point with all of this, and I've sort of to reiterate the same thing again, is that for each point slide thing you're going to say, do ask yourself, so what? Again, is it relevant? Is it going to directly advance getting to this North Star, this final state, right? And as I kept saying again, start lean and build up. You can, even though I'm advocating shift right and everything, you can go and pepper something with more and more detail if you think it is relevant. But the point is if you've structured it in this lean way which goes forward, you can go back and do that instead of having to wrestle stuff out of it. Yep. And the final note on all of this is ideas are cheap. The reason I'm saying that you should start with Word, by the way, is that if you take a whole section of that, copy it out, put it into another document, put it back in again, that is really easy to do. It takes virtually no time to type out some new ideas on Word. Ideas are cheap. Take a real kill your darlings approach to this. I mean, don't actually kill anybody, by the way. It's a figure of speech, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So let's talk about the meaty design principles, shall we? Right. If you remember nothing else from this talk, I implore you to remember this slide. Okay. Basically, the foundation of information design and most design, I would contend, is something called signal-noise ratio. Okay. In any sort of visual medium, you have stuff that's going on. And then among that stuff, you have the signal, right? The stuff is the noise. The signal is the bit that's what's relevant to what you're talking about. And the noise is everything else, okay? Information design is the art of making sure that the signal is not lost in the noise. Or to put it a little bit more bluntly, I've got a load of stuff on screen. Are you paying attention to the thing I want you to pay attention to, right? Again, think about that system diagram. If you're standing there trying to get the third thing, my eyes are still darting around unless we've subdued the rest of it a little bit. Okay. So how do we do this? Pardon me. How do we separate the signal from noise? So a few more tenets for you. First of all, clean, minimalist designs. As you might have noticed with these decks so far, I do not have an awful lot on my slides. It's most, I mean, granted, it's just one line at the moment, but it's mostly just white space, right? We've got a handful of like highlights here, but it's quite minimalist. And what that means is the content that's on there stands out quite a lot. And it means the highlights stand out as well. The next one is make sure it's visible from the back of the room. And to do this, I literally mean walk to the, I'm not going to walk all the way back there, but like walk to the back of your lounge, your bedroom or whatever, open up your laptop screen or your desktop monitor. Can you read the main points on it, right? Because if you can't read the main points there, the people in your audience won't be able to read them either. Next one, sort of a bit of an echo of clean minimalist designs, but I think it bears like repeating by itself. Make sure everything has space to breathe, right? The worst way to do noise is to have everything like crunched up into itself. So think about your content needs to be lying on the bed and stretching out like that, right? And again, the reason for this is you see there's lots of white space here, which means the content stands out a bit more, which means that when we have the highlights here, they stand out a little bit more because they're not competing with your attention as much. And finally, to sort of echo the points I'm getting at a lot, direct your audience with contrast and staging, okay? Contrast is all about weight, so like how thick things are, symbology that you're using, color. Staging is what I've seen here, where you're introducing things one bit at a time, building it up, because your eyes are naturally going to lock onto whatever the new thing is, right? This is the bread and butter. So text is going to be the bread and butter, sorry, text is rather the bread and butter of your deck. So let's look on that as an example of how to do this practically. So what do I use text for? Well, first of all, I use it to summarize the stuff that I'm talking about, obviously. Quite handy to just sort of say it to reinforce it to everybody. Partly I do that to find my place if I get lost mid-talk, especially for like the aspiring speakers among us and anyone in the audience. I really cannot recommend learning the subtle art of, I have lost where I am, I'm going to gesture gracefully to the deck and hope that I can work it out in a few seconds. There's also the, I've lost where I am, I'm going to gesture gracefully over to my water bottle and hope that I can find my spot as well. You'd be amazed how much that works really well. But you can find it. This part, honestly, helps me a lot. The other thing is it'll help you guys as well. I'll be completely honest, I drift off all the time during talks. I'm really terrible for it, even at work if I get bored of them, honestly. But it's really handy, actually, because if someone's made a point of putting the major points on there, I can drift back. Oh, it's worth saying, I might not just be bored. I might just have to like answer an email on my phone or something that's quite urgent. Someone sent me a Slack message that I've got to respond to pretty quickly. We all have these situations. But again, it gives you an anchor point because you can jump back in. I can listen to what you're saying and recontextualize myself very easily. And final one is adding extra content for later. Right, so I realized I said right at the beginning of this talk, no writing articles, article or talk. There is no neither shall the two mix, you know, but you can blend the two together-ish. And this is my whole sort of point about signal noise ratio, and this is how you can do it. It's all about balancing the two. So, when does text become a wall? Would anyone like to hazard a guess?
Too much.
Too much text? Yeah, pretty much. But how much is too much text?
When you start reading from slides, when you start reading from
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. When you get lost in there. So I would sort of say, to relate to what we just said, is when the signal's lost in the noise, right? If you're just like standing in it, it's just like that, that's when there's too much, right? And this is what I'm getting at with how you mediate the two of them. When you got text, your signals, right? Signals and noise, your signals are the key words, right? The main things that your audience needs to take away from any slide that's on there. So how do we do this practically? Oh yeah, so at a glance, going back to my stand at the back of the room thing, at a glance, your audience should be able to read the keywords on there. A bit like how I've made a point of like highlighting here. They should be able to look at the slide and immediately know what you're supposed to be talking about. So you've already seen a version of this already. Actually, yeah, they're going to pop up. Yeah, you've already seen a version of how I've done this already. Okay, so for the intro marks here, you'll notice that these headings are made much bigger than the text next to them. They're in big primary colors to alert you to them. They're also bold. The other thing as well I've done importantly is I've muted all the text beneath them. Now I know that this makes this difficult to read, and I have deliberately made it difficult to read because I don't want you reading it. This is what I'm saying, but the point is going back to how do you strike the balance of notes for later versus notes for now, is that, I mean, happy to distribute these slides afterwards, but this means is that you can sit at home or work or something and read through this at your own pace. Then you will be able to read this perfectly. But for now, we mute it. Those at the front, if you want to like flick through, go for it. But the emphasis here, you are reading those 3 points. There's variations of this as well in terms of design, just to show things off. You can also do this with like floating paragraph headings like we've got here. If you want to, you can also telegraph them with icons as well. I find this is a good sort of visual depiction of it as well. I mean, you pick things which are relevant. This is just lorem ipsum I've got. What you can also do as well is what I call words and paragraphs. Here we go. So to sort of show you an example of this. So, well, how I would do hashes. Right, so hashes are fingerprints of data which are cheap to produce. So notice how I'm using the colors which the fingerprint is for the metaphor there. Next one, if you change even a single bit, the whole hash changes. 3 different fingerprints, 3 different colors. We're using those colorings right there to reflect it. And then finally, so we can use them to see if someone's been changed. Again, notice the colors that we're using here, relates it all to it. Again, staged information, right? Also notice I didn't talk about how SHA-256 is derived from first principles. Oh, sorry, one more light note on this. Just sort of forgot to say. See what I mean? Reminding me of my own points. If you're going to do this, I realize this is a bit of a hodgepodge thing here, but if you're going to like highlight stuff, a good strategy I tend to use is, can you get these to form a sort of pseudo sentence, basically? I'm not sure this is the best example, but like if you look at the keywords here, you can almost read them by itself. And obviously it's missing all the proper glue words, but even reading these, you can get the gist of the point I'm trying to make you. And if you can get that to flow through the paragraphs as well, all the better. Generally speaking, to give some more practical examples, I would avoid putting logs on the slide. It is the epitome of noise, basically. But if you are going to put logs onto a slide, again, what I'm saying about here, highlight them, put some kind of annotation onto it to make it clear what it's about. Code, by the way, is something very similar. I mean, obviously, we have syntax highlighting, which actually works for all the reasons that I've said already. It's about signal versus noise, and particularly if you're familiar with a certain color coding, you can zero in on the bits you want. But again, the trouble is code on a slide which you're not familiar with is a bit of a soup, right? You've got to sort of jump through it. So again, make a point of highlighting the bit you want, and I would gray out the bits which are not relevant. Definitely cut it down to the snippet. In both cases, if you want to show off code or logs, really, I would stick to your editor or stick to Grafana or something, or better so, just talk in, you know, diagrams, sentences, describe it using English, right? So to round off with things about text, your font choices matter. So probably not for the reason you think. About 15% of the population have some kind of visual or cognitive impairment that means reading is difficult. And I don't mean like sort of really struggling with it, but dyslexia is one of the most common ones for this. You can actually design around this reasonably accommodatingly. There's a combination of accessible principles that you can be using, and also there are fonts which are designed specifically to be read by people with visual impairments like this. I could probably spend ages talking about this, so I won't. What instead I will do is there's an article which I'll link to in all the links at the back of this, which I'd say everyone should read. That does actually explain the specifics of how to do this. There are also some fonts you can use. So Poppins is what I use throughout this deck. There's also Atkinson Hyperlegible. That's made by the American Braille Association, and that's the sort of gold standard for this sort of thing. To Homer and Vedana, anyone you should be familiar with as well, because they're defaults. But anyway, I'll let you guys go and read this because it's a massive, interesting subject by itself. The other thing I would sort of say is I know there's a slight tendency sometimes for people to pick like stylized fonts because it looks kind of cute. Don't, just stick to neutrals. The thing is, text is never plain, okay? It's always dressed. If you want a really good example of this, isn't this cute, right? You make me smile. Like, I'd love my loved one to send me a little postcard or something like with that on it, okay? I'm not sure I'd want that to be sent to me. But it's the same text, right? You see my sort of point. Try and stick to neutral ones because it really does affect the tone. Granted, I don't think anyone's going to be putting that into their, you know, like tech diagrams, but you see what I mean about pick your fonts correctly, they've got an impact. So let's talk about color. Portrait of the artist as, I don't know, his editor. So color's got some rules as well. First of all is stick to a small palette. You probably noticed this with this deck so far. I only use a handful of colors. They're mostly sort of what you call we'll go through color theory on the next slide, but they're mostly sort of what you call a sort of square selection of them. Point is that they all contrast with each other, and then I'll also use highlights of grey as well on it. The point is, there's not very much going on with here, because the more you introduce, the more it's going to start fighting with each other as well. There's also, again, for reasons I'll let you guys dig into colour theory in your own time, but there's only like so many positions on a colour wheel you can do before they start being the same. Like, I mean, I think we're all probably aware there's only so many colours that exist. The next thing is make sure your palette contrasts as well. Probably harking back a bit, I should have put the IBM deck on here, but I see this an awful lot where people use complements instead, which is fine in terms of general branding, but we want stuff to pop. You want it to jump out at you. That's the whole sort of point here. So if you've got colors which are basically the same, they're not going to contrast. And a real big thing to remember that with is the background, right? Dark pops on light and light pops on dark. You see with these, I've made a point of doing it so these all stand out, right? So another thing on this, not all colors are equal, and they grab your attention in different orders. If you remember the order, it's basically Roygabiv from school, remembers that. Richard of York gave battle in vain. Bugger. I don't know what the B and the G would be in this sort of situation. In terms of how they group together, this is kind of what I'm getting at. Basically, the way palettes are picked, more or less, is that there are certain rules to do with how colors all coordinate with each other. Again, would implore you guys to go and have a look at color theory. I'll put some links out as some good things to read on this. If you're not quite sure what to pick as your palette, by the way, Adobe and plenty of others actually have palette generators which will pick things for you based on these principles, and they will jump to the other side of the color wheel and find like the perfect opposite, and then they'll also split it out into complements as well, so you'll have a nice little variety of them. Be careful with your palettes though. Just like text has issues, so does color. Something like 4 to 8% of men and something like 0.5% of women are colorblind. There's various different conditions which affects people for this, but really the long and the short of it is that if you are not colorblind and pick a palette, this is going to be distorted in quite a substantial way. And if this is the primary way that you're marking stuff out, it's going to be lost. Okay. Now, fortunately, there are tools to do things with. There's a thing, David Nichols is a PhD student from the University of Connecticut, I think, who has built a simulator which basically will show you for various different forms of color blindness what your palette is going to look like. I use this quite extensively. Also, you don't have to come up with it yourself. There are plenty of pre-made palettes for this sort of thing as well. The IBM one, the Bang Wong, yes, actual name, pardon me, and Paul Toll's one as well. What I also recommend to everybody is just don't make color the sole way that you're highlighting things. We're going to talk about diagrams in a moment, but just don't make it the sole highlight mechanism. To give you an example of how you can do this without it, if anyone's a fan of XKCD or XKCD What If, you notice something about Randall Munro's designs, they're all monochrome. There's very little color, if any at all, in them, and he represents a lot of complex information in it. Granted, that's a whole thing into itself, which again, I could spend an entire talk talking about. But if you want to make sure your stuff is really accessible, you could just make it monochrome. So let's talk about diagrams. So text's partner in crime, as it were. So the same rules still apply here. Clean minimalism, small contrasting palette, and stage your information. I would contend these things are even more important now. Remember that system design diagram from the beginning? That thing, that's the beast you've got to tame here, right? And there are some new rules. The first one is have a consistent visual language. And I realize that's a sort of archaic, wordy sounding thing. What I mean by that is just have something that's easy to read, basically. What you want to establish with your user is having the same icons and colors which actually denote things. If you go and have a look at any of those fancy keynote speeches that people give out, or like, you know, well manicured systems diagrams, you'll notice that all of the iconography all follows a similar sort of format. Right? The colors all actually mean something. They all, like, you know, blue always means like services, green means a load balancer, etc., etc. Right? That's what I mean by a visual language. And so I also bring with this a few tenets of thou shalt not. Right? And I will come after you now you've been warned about this. First one is no low resolution images. My God. Right? I see these all the time. It distracts from the rest of your deck, particularly if everything's high def. It just looks very unprofessional. No. The next one is no animations. There is a particular demographic of manager who are obsessed with 3D animations in particular. Again, no, I say, we will not stand for it. Not least, right, if you want a more specific why no animations, signal and noise. This thing is wobbling on in the background and doing its little thing there. I mean, granted, this is reasonably succinct, so this one isn't too bad. But you like animated cogs and things I've seen before. It's distracting from everything else. Signal and noise, remember. Don't mix styles. Again, this is something I've seen as well. Don't mix your drinks either, but especially don't do this. The amount of times I've seen like 3D stuff mixed with like monochrome and then randomly there's a background on there as well. Again, this is just for a look of you like presenting things out. It looks remarkably unprofessional if you have mixed styles and low resolution stuff. Again, think about like any sort of keynote stuff you've seen. Think about those of you who are in more sort of client-facing stuff. Think about what you've seen with that. It never looks like this, and this is the reason why. And the final sin is no backgrounds. Okay. The worst offender with all of this, I see this all the time, where people have the transparent checkered pattern on there and seem to think that I have missed that it's on there. That does not make it invisible. Or little nods to our Redis hosts here. You've got the Redis host with grey around it. That's not a background. I don't care if my background is white. That has not disappeared. Right, the React one I have a little bit of time for. That's a light one. That's not going to show up better on here. Still not an excuse, right? You can find a version of that that's a PNG without a background, put it into Photopea, which is an online version of Photoshop, flip the colors, and you can make it dark mode immediately. Or there'll be a dark mode version of it. For that matter, don't put the blooming name of it in there as well. I see this again on systems diagrams a lot, where people seem to just need to tell me what the name of it is. Just write it in blooming your text underneath there. Okay, he calms down.
Hey, these Redis logo.
Yeah.
Old one.
Oh, is that the? Oh, yeah, because you've got the new fancy one.
The
Wow.
old one.
Even more for reason to get rid of it. So let's talk about visual metaphors for a minute. So I'm going to give some practical examples of this. Again, you see the same thing I was doing last time, where we're color coding to what we've got on the screen. And by the way, so what this diagram is going to be all about is how we use hashes in blockchain. Actually, to go back to, again, no SHA-256 in there. So how do we use hashes in blockchain? Right, I assume you all know what a hash is, like from the early thing, fingerprint of data. We all remember that, okay? So blockchains are composed of basically these groups of transaction commits, basically. That's literally what a block is. And what you do is you make a hash out of all the records in that block, okay? But it's not just that. You also make a hash out of the ones behind it. So you notice what we're doing here with the way this is structured and with the coloring as well. Everything feeds into the next one. Very good visual metaphor for how these all feed together, especially if we look at orange, that comes from blue, and therefore by extension, orange is based on all of the records before it, right? Now, that's basically how the actual cryptography works. There's metadata which points between them, but basically that's the actual security bit. Now, if we sort of do this as well, what do we use hashes for? Notice again, orange, which we're color coding to the final version of the hash. Green is the what the fuck is that, basically. Pardon my French, I shouldn't be swearing on this, but you get the picture, right? That's what I was saying. In terms of doing systems diagram, this is just a really trivial one because I had to draw this all from scratch. I actually very often use abstract shapes. So remember when you're talking about having a consistent visual language, this is often really handy if you need to describe something a bit arcane or complex, but you don't want to use specific images. And also because this saves you having to actually find the iconography for specific system bits and make sure they're all of the same type. You notice again, use of color here. Purple always means a service, but you notice it also, we're representing that with a square. So if you're colorblind, you don't have to know, you just have to look for the squares and you know that that's the thing. So let's talk about this beast then. So what we're going to do about this. So let's say that this data analytics component, I need to introduce this stuff. Remember how I was saying staging content, right, and directing it? Honestly, what I would do, gray the thing out like that, okay? Reason for that is we've got the context of the whole thing. Now, I've made this quite gray. You could make it a little bit less to show it. The point is now we have the context of the entire diagram for you to still see. You can see where it's in there. We've isolated this part, and now I can talk. Is this actually going to do it in time? Yeah, and now I can talk my way through what we're building and why, and give a little speech on that. But the point is that you've got the attention right there with the context of it too. So we're going to finish off by talking about page layouts. So big thing you guys need to understand here is called the rule of thirds. If anyone's got a digital camera, you might have noticed there's a setting where you get this thing appearing on there, the sort of funny like window pane. What's it? So rule of thirds is a thing from, well, it's visual art generally, but photography, it's where it's most common. And basically what you do is you divide the page into 9 evenly spaced boxes, okay? And the idea is that you place all the content along these lines, basically, or you place them at their intersections, so either side of that. And what this is all about is that when I talk about weight in terms of the image, so yeah, that can obviously mean like literal weight of a font, how thick lines are, that sort of stuff. But very commonly, we're talking about the mass of the image. Where's all the stuff centered? And what this means is you center it across these, in the middle of them, basically. So to give some examples from this deck, again, you notice all the headings, we focus them down here. With the content here, again, focused in those two latter ones over there. A lot of my stuff tends to be on this side, as worth saying. Again, notice where the weight is all positioned with all of this. And one more example. So this is going two ways. First of all, we are doing horizontal weight, and then we're also doing vertical weight. But you see my points here in terms of how it's aligned with these lines, basically. This is running between them. This is running down them, okay? And basically, the reason you do this, it distributes what's on your page very nicely. It doesn't feel like anything's like jumping into it too much. So as we're saying, the other way signals are often lost is monotony. With the best will in the world, just having colored headings is not going to make your deck interesting or different, okay? And if you keep doing this over and over and over and over and over again, that will also get bored. You basically just have a wall of text at this point as well, okay? You need to have a bit of variation to keep things fresh. Now, that doesn't have to be big. Remember these two slides? I would argue that these are identical. I mean, they literally are. You've got title, checklist, and a little subtitle beneath it. The only difference is that the font's a little, coloring is a little bit different, and this has got a background. That's it, right? Incidentally, adding backgrounds are a really easy way to freshen things, by the way. I love doing this because it breaks stuff up. I mean, people like seeing stuff. It can be quite good fun. You can also, it's a good opportunity to introduce some silly images as well. Jackie Chan has been like the representative of all sorts of confused architects and developers over the years. The man has done our community such a service. But I mean, they're also just fun, you know, that's the thing with it. So likewise with visual metaphors, okay? So you saw the sort of signal noise ratio, saw the stop at the beginning. Other stuff I also like to do, have like a little dictionary definition of something, have like a this and this and this, you know, some little equation to do stuff. And also you can do stuff like telegraphing. So that's why I said next to your floating paragraphs, you have your little icon, because that like telegraphs what it is, tells you them. That said though, do be sparing of this. Like much as I'm sort of saying like, you know, with the best will and don't copy and paste it, it is worth you having a baseline and injecting this here and there. So you'll notice that a lot of my slides tend to follow the same sort of thing, and I do this here and there. Think about, you know, weird slides as being a sort of like spice which you sprinkle onto the deck to just make it interesting here and there, right? So, right at the end of the talk, we're almost there, guys. We got through it, okay? We haven't suffered death by PowerPoint yet. Do we? Okay. Well, cool. Maybe some time for some questions then, Gold. Right, so let's recap with your new design checklist, shall we? First thing, did you write the script first? Okay, essential rule. Then, is the signal visible in the noise? Check that through all your slides. Are your colors and your fonts accessible? You know, did you pick Atkinson Hyperlegible? Do you have a colorblind palette? Are your slides clean and minimalist? You know, you can see there's an awful lot of like nothing here. By the way, you'll notice that the copyright symbol here is very sort of like subtle, by the way. That's a big thing I see on corporate stuff all the time, where it's effing massive. And you also have like the corporate logo on this side. My last place had a massive logo which occupied almost all of the page. We know who the company is. You don't need to like tell us 100 times. There was a really egregious one actually in the IBM days where they had copyright IBM worldwide, and copyright IBM 2020 on there. By the way, if you didn't know the talk was done by IBM, like you definitely would by the end of it. Oh yeah, exactly. Well, maybe they saw this and just went, you know what, we've got it. It was aligned. Yeah, they did it along the on the rule of third alignments. So the last one, it's too much actually. Are you staging the information just like I am here, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit? You're going to latch onto the new thing, but remember that always. Remember that systems diagram. Remember the colossal thing. If you mute it all out and put bits on, it's much easier to focus. And then finally, can you read it from the back of the room? And I'm not joking when I say, with this one, I literally stood at like the back of my lounge, was just like, can I read it? And if you can, like jokes aside, it's good. There's a reason you make things really big. It's so they can be read, okay? I will leave you with a closing thought, which is have fun. Public speaking is fun. You can make some fun stuff with your talks. unlike this cat who's not very happy. He doesn't like doing talks. But, you know, on that, if you don't like doing talks, it's okay. Public speaking is awesome. I love it. But there's nothing wrong with writing articles as well. The point is horses for courses with this sort of stuff. That's all, folks. Thank you very much. How do we? Yeah. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah.
Sure. Does anyone have a question? So I'll tell you what. You put your hand up first, sir. Go for it.
Yeah, have you come across any studies about the efficiency of the speech generally, with and without slides?
I haven't come across any particular studies. I guess most of this is intuited from my own experience on it. I think things are perfectly capable with, I think basically the difference comes is how complicated the subject is, basically, and it's like how much intuition do people have of it beforehand. Because if you're explaining, again, this is what I mean by know your audience and that sort of stuff. If people kind of are familiar with the subject matter already, you can kind of do it without. But as soon as we're getting into, again, like systems or anything that you have to quantify at all, it's more effective just because it's, again, there are certain things which it's just difficult to quantify. But I don't have a particular study I can cite for you. Most of this is just experience of my own. If that makes sense.
My message is, in some cases, I find that when the slides are most dense, of course, we don't do diagrams.
Yeah.
And someone is just doing a speech and then out with keywords.
Yeah.
But sometimes just the mere action of trying to read those keywords distracts you from the speech, and therefore you're kind of struggling. Going back and forth between the two sources of the
No, I get your point. I think this is what I was saying about like muting the rest of it though. And you kind of want, this is why you stage the information too. So you kind of bring everything up as you're talking about it. So the stuff that they're paying, like the keywords they'll be looking at will be like, one, there won't be very many of them on there. I mean, granted, the way I've done it here probably isn't the best. You'd have to sort of see an actual talk with this stuff done. But ideally, when you're going through the subject matter of it, you should have a handful of keywords appearing as you're saying them, if that makes sense. So even if there is like a quick jump between the two of them, they don't detract attention from each other so much. Does that make sense? Cool. I'm sorry, Martin, you had a question.
Very selfish.
Go. No, I'm not going to fix your PowerPoint.
My slides, I don't know if you pay attention. What was wrong with my slides?
Just what I would like, just the one thing.
There were more. There were.
If I had to give a handful of things with your slides to constructively critique them, first of all, I'd get rid of the big banner at the top. Just because, again, in terms of just weight on the page, you can have like, definitely, I love the way that you have the sort of title and subtitle stuff. That's really good. But get rid of the big juicy banner at the top because it just consumes a load of it. Then obviously the font is sans. It's like a nice font, but I would swap that to like an Arial or, like I said, one of the ones I mentioned there. Things, and then a little bit more space around it. But I'd say your decks were good though. I liked it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Fine.
I'm just interested, you said at the beginning about writing it.
Yes.
Now there's lots of different ways in which people find it easy to think about things, and some people may actually find it really hard to visualize what they're looking at from like a bubble text which they're writing themselves.
Fair enough.
Do you have any thoughts on how to make that sort of process easier?
So I think that bit of the process. I suppose it's a part of it is kind of, this is a slightly unhelpful answer, but it's like kind of practice, basically, and you tend to relate them. But what you can do is stage it. Like you don't have to wait till the entire section is done, right? Often what you can do is do what's like lo-fi designs, basically. So I will, sometimes what I will do if I'm getting a bit impatient, because like that Word document's huge. I mean, this is a 45-minute talk. There's a fair amount of chunk in it. Often what I'll do is I'll finish a section, and if I'm mostly happy with it, I will sketch up like in black and white, almost give like a rough layout, and that helps me position things in my mind. What I'll also do as well is I'm typing things out. If I dream up something as a fun way of depicting that, underneath the section, I will usually write in like sort of italicized and slightly muted an idea for the slide, basically. Because then for each one, I've kind of, it gives you, I don't have to write out, but this would be a cool way of depicting this, or find photo of this sort of thing, or, like this that you saw with the, the signal noise one, it's like, have like word surrounded by that. That's how I often find that it's a nice sort of segue without making it. Go.
So I tend to do presentations internally.
Yep.
To be specific.
Yep.
And my slides tend to be very spare.
Mm.
I like to talk. There's a lot of I tend to circulate slides afterwards and I put a lot of content in the presentations.
Yeah.
I tend to use labels now.
Yeah.
Do you use it? It's a lot. It's you know what's you're being guided by the slides.
I was in like, am I using presenter notes to remind myself things? It depends how long I've had to remember the talk. If I'm going to move, so short answer, yes, I do. This one I wasn't using so much, but I do tend to use them quite a bit. If it's like a meaty talk, which, especially I've done versions of this talk a few times, but meatier technical talks where there's a lot of information and it's like the first time I'm doing it, yeah, I will definitely have presenter notes on there for it. Yeah, basically. But I think in terms of handing it out to people, I tend to try and keep what's on the deck, basically, rather than my notes. But yeah, I absolutely use them. That's it. If people ask me for presenter notes, they're happy to have them. I'm not precious about them. Cool. Any other questions? Wonderful stuff. Well, there's always one. Go.
ChatGPT images.
ChatGPT images. What about them?
What about using them in slides?
In what sense? What should you use them?
What I see, like people used to include a lot of like generated images, and they usually not exactly about the point. Also, that's a kind of
yeah. I'm not sure I understand the question. If that's okay.
I've got a question which might be similar to it,
yeah.
which is, have you ever used any generative AI tools to create a
No.
No,
I tend to sort of make it from scratch. Actually, well, this is a point I was going to make as well. Don't reinvent the wheel with this. Seriously, how I learned how to make decks was every deck I got sent that I thought was cool, I would just save. And then I ended up making a big template deck, which had all the different possible variations of it. And this is genuinely over years. This is how I taught myself how to do this stuff. But if I think your thing on like were you getting at like, do people use like generated images, or is that a good idea, or where do? Okay. So I mean, people do. I don't tend to. So what I was going to have at the back of this is the links I was going to share with everybody. There's actually loads of resources for getting stock images. So almost everything that you saw today was from Pexels or Reshot. You can get all of that royalty free. You don't need to do a citation. There's stuff like FreePick as well, where you do, but it's literally just say, copyright, blah, blah, blah at the end of your deck. But between Pexels, Wikimedia Commons, and like the rest of this, you can genuinely find a royalty-free stock image for anything. Like Pexels has pictures of ghosts running around with sunglasses on it, like and like people dressed as bananas riding scooters. Like it's genuinely anything you want is on these pages, basically. So I guess you can use ChatGPT for stuff, but I guess why I bring this up is that I found that between these sources and also Photopea is basically Photoshop, but in a browser. Figma, anyone working with design, might know that, but you can edit SVGs with that really well. Between all of this stuff, I guess I've always found what I need, and I've never needed to use generative stuff, basically. Also, because this is all super high definition as well. Yes. Go.
Yeah. If you want nice, clean versions of brands' logos, go look at the best Pixel media resources. They will have nice.
Agreed.
Where is that?
So if most companies will have some usual.
Yeah. In fact, actually, if you want like images of like laptops without screens on them, I think Facebook actually have a design pack full of like high def versions of that. But anyway, at the risk of me dorking out on other like design things, is there any last question, and then I yield to go. My favorite accessible color, cerulean blue. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, thank you very much, guys. You've been a wonderful audience.
So we will have few minutes break when we sort out the other guys. I'll give you our number that
when I was trying to get the girls to kind of start training and, going for tournaments, I was trying to convince the parents, the society, the community, to let the girls play. So it was all about leadership, like trying to get them on board. There were some issues that some parents had or community had. I had to figure out a way to solve those issues so the girls could play. Communication was the key. I had to make sure that I was, kind of explaining them well so they were on board. And confidence, creating that confidence in the girls because they never played. So again, it was that, they were going to go and play a tournament. So while they were doing the training, I had to make sure that I was giving them confidence, the boost that they could go and have that tournament with other girls. So I was building the skills that I wasn't aware of. So again, while I was raising my boys and being the supportive wife, I realized I had lost myself, and I wanted to go back into what I found, what was my passion. And obviously, it didn't happen overnight. I had to change my mindset because, as you can tell, I'm not. It was in my 20s when I was trying to decide to go back into tech. So it was all about shifting that mindset. But starting small, like I started with a free HTML and CSS course, which kind of gave me that boost. Okay, maybe I can go back. My brain is not completely dead because of my age, but then I kind of moved on to boot camps, and then kind of tried to do. It was hard because tech, we all know, and coding, it's not easy. And someone like me who's kind of not ever been in the tech space, it was really difficult to kind of understand the cloud. Like, what do you mean cloud? So it was important for me to take my time and learn, and not get swamped with it, like everyone knows so much more and I don't know and I'm never going to be able to do it. And communities, like I'm part of women coding community, which is a great support network for me because I felt like I could bounce off ideas. I didn't feel alone. So it was really important to do these things to kind of go further. Mentorship is very key to basically my life, because when I started my the coding course, what happened was I had a coding mentor who kind of kept me going because I felt, like overwhelmed. I was like, at one point I wanted to cry because it was too much for me. But he kept me going. He's like, gave me that boost of confidence. Then when I broke into tech, my first role, again, there was this whole imposter syndrome kicking in. And I was like, gosh, I can't do this. There were so many things I was second guessing myself. And then the good part was this, the company I was working for had this mentoring not services, but they were offering mentoring. So I can join that. And that was a huge game changer for me because that mentor helped me with all the questions, all the doubts I was having every single time in the meeting. Like, did I present it right? Did I say this right? Did I make a mistake? So he was there lifting me up, making sure that I had the building the confidence to be in the corporate world. So I would say, like, anyone who is trying to change their career or trying to change something in their life, I would say starts with something small, because that's what I did, like very small, and then celebrate those small wins. It's so important. I had a lot of rejection when I started looking for work because, I didn't have a corporate experience. I didn't have, like any kind of experience. I just had odd jobs here and there. So it was very, very difficult for me to break into tech. But, I had something else that kind of wanted to look forward to. So, for example, like I had friends that, like my hobbies were like going for a walk or being in the nature, and that used to help me. Um, you know, we're all unique and we all have something to give, different aspects. So I was very worried that, like, oh, I'm like nothing like others. Everyone has got so much more. But, we all have got something unique in ourselves. And that's what we need to embrace and be ourselves. Community is the key. Like, find your group or community to kind of, be together, because if it makes you feel like you're not alone. If you're dealing with something, there's always someone there to kind of talk to you or, bounce off some ideas. So, conclusion, like, it's okay to do things your way. You can have your own roadmap to your career, because I didn't go through the traditional way, and it's okay. Like, whatever works for you, keep learning. The one thing I would say, I didn't just learn tech. I was reading other books as well, like self-help books, motivation books, and I know it's easier said than done, but less scrolling, more reading, I would say, because when you're on social media like Instagram, you feel like everyone has got their life sorted out. I'm like falling behind, like I'm just starting up in tech. It just makes you feel not great. So just keep reading different books or reading different material. Have some plan, like, when things get hard, you have a plan. Like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna treat myself. Like, for me, like, oh, I'll go and have a spa day. Just have loads of massages to make me feel better. And mentors, friends, they're really helpful. Rely on them, because they always want to help. There are always people out there who wants to help. And last but not least, just tech is huge. I mean, I went in as becoming a software developer, and I am doing those kind of things, but I'm also learning other bits, and it's interesting, and it just kind of opens the door for me, like doing other things. And yeah, it just keeps you motivated. And yes, so whatever you are doing, don't give up, keep going, and please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer any questions. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Any questions?
So when you're saying that, obviously to get the girls involved, one of the friction points, I suppose, actually chatting to their parents about it. What did you find convinced the parents the most? What was it that made, when you were discussing, what did you find made them comfortable with the idea of this?
I think the main point is that I was listening and I was trying to understand their point of view. And it was more about like, okay, so once I understood where their kind of pain points are, then kind of use that to motivate and kind of convince them to get the girls to play. So I think the listening skill was like huge there to kind of get them to understand.
Yeah. Any more? So yeah, thank you for your time. It's inspirational, because if I replace your name with mine, it will be very similar stories. So,
Yeah.
so I'm not alone in this world. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank
Again.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we have very simple. I'll stop sharing.
Hello, hello.
Did you mute yourself?
Yeah, I need to mute in StreamYard as well. Yeah, it should be
Okay.
fine.
Verissimo. Stage is yours. And I'm going to check the screen.
Okay. So let me start asking 3 questions for you. The first question, who uses AI in day-to-day? Nice. And who uses AI in the development process? So things like Windsurf, Cursor, Codex. Yeah. Okay, and who has ever shipped to production a feature using AI that is a client-facing feature? Nice, good stuff. All right, so, well, nice to meet you all. My name is Verissimo. I am a software engineer. I have a few open source projects, a few certifications, and what I believe is that AI is getting better, and we can start thinking about building client-facing features using AI. So let me just break down the title of my presentation. First, what is unstructured data? And here, basically, an email is unstructured data, a document is unstructured data, anything that doesn't have a proper structured format. Whereas a structured data, it is JSON, a YAML, something that you can easily process through a computing system. Now, let's think about the example of parsing a bank statement. And so far here, there would be very simple bank statements, things like this one. You have just the date, description, and value, and a table in the middle. So that would be quite straightforward to parse. Although you also may have things like this one here. That's my bank, by the way, Icon Express. And the first page, you should just ignore. There is no relevant information here. And the second page, this is what we are looking for. That's the table that we like to parse. You have date, you have description, and you have amount as well. Now, by the way, at the end, there is going to be many other pages that also contains tables. And in this case here, we should just ignore. So another point, it is about the descriptions. So let's suppose we have the categories table, and in the category, we would like to parse Foxton real estate. That surely it's number 4, a rent. Now, on the other side, you have here TFL travel charge, which of course should be number 2, TFL. So that is something that is quite simple if you have cognitive capabilities, however, very complex if you are trying to use just regular algorithms as we use it to have. So I'm not saying that AI is perfect. It's far away from that. What I'm saying is that it's getting better enough to solve this type of very simple problem that before it was quite complex to solve. I have a case of study. So this is a personal tool of mine. It's a very simple payable and receivable thing. And what I've created here, it is 2 features using AI. The first one, a simple assistant where you can, through natural language, interact with the system and just ask something like, create 4 new suppliers, and then for each supplier, create the transaction as well. So what the system does there is create it for you. And the second one, it is a import statement. That is what we just discussed. So basically here what you do, it is to import your PDF. The system will read the data, take and extract the date, the description, and the value, and then parse the categories. And in the case of suppliers, either create a new supplier or load that supplier to the system. At the end, the user can still review before submitting. Now, there are different AI solutions. The first two that I will kind of touch today is not that I will be able to go much deeper than that, but single prompt, that's basically you have your prompt, you send to LLM, and you get back an answer. Now, this is very simple, but still quite powerful in some case. And the other one is a workflow. So basically imagine that you are gonna orchestrate different prompts trying to get a result. Agent and assistants I won't cover, but I will give you some news at the end. So about the single prompt, trying to dig a little bit on that. That's a Spring AI image, and here what you have, it's your input, the LLM, and the output, and you can have here the retrieval, tools, and memory. Now, our challenge here is quite simple. What we would like to do, it is to take the description, TFL travel charge, and map to the category number 3, travel. Now, I wouldn't like that as a plain text. What I would like to receive as a parameter back, it is an object, a structured format that then I will be able to use in my processing. So to kick off that, I will start just in Spring Initializer. I did that already. So I created here 2 dependencies, Spring Web and OpenAI. And I have this project here. I will just switch. Yeah, I think you guys at the end can see it. All right, so what I have here, it's a Git repository. I will show you at the end the URL, but I'm in commit number 3 here. I already have a list of categories, and what I'm creating new, it's a new endpoint that we'll receive as a parameter. What's the description? And in the description here, it's saying TFL travel charge. And what I would expect here as an assertion, it is that it will return 3 travel as per the slide. Now, if I open my controller, that's going to be quite straightforward. The controller is just receiving the parameter description and then passing to the serves where the magic is happening. So here, I have the OpenAI chat model. And then from there, I have my DTO. This is the expected output that I would like to get back. And then I also have a bin output converter, which we just do the plain text to the conversion to my object. And then I have a few options here. Things like what is the model that I am using and what is the structure that I'm expecting as return. Then I have my prompt. What I will do here is just to let a breakpoint so then we can see when I run the test what it will happen here with the prompt. Finally, I have the call and I convert it and return the category ID. Now, if I run this test, and fingers crossed that will work. Yeah, so we stop here, and basically I'm replacing here the text that was before to the TFL travel charge as my parameter. And then after that, I have here in JSON, what are the categories that I would like to map to. Now, I will explain in one moment why JSON here, but what matter here is that if I run the test, it should pass, and my description here will be mapped with my body to 3 travel. Okay. Now, I will do another question. And how many of you think that AI is non-deterministic? Meaning you have one input and the same input, if you send to AI, you are going to receive 2 different answers. How many of you think that's non-deterministic? Yeah, so I have this parameter, temperature, that if I set that to 0, the format, it will be the same. So you are going to send the same input twice, and you're going to receive the same answer. Now, that is not 100% of the case, because if you're using for all, there are still subversions that they roll out, and you are relying on a third-party provider. So you can't assure 100% of times, but most case, it will be the same answer. And that is great when you are parsing data and trying to structure the pieces of information. And as well, you can set up max tokens, which will help you controlling costs. Now, diving a little bit on LLM part and trying to help how to choose one provider. And here, the way that I see, first, you have different distributions. So you can have as a service, which it's plug and play. You go there, create an account, you generate a token, and you are ready to use. The second one is private cloud. So you can, for example, in Azure, you can just launch the ChatGPT models, the GPT models, and you will have and you will follow their privacy. The data won't go to OpenAI servers, which can address some very concerning problems on privacy. And then as well, if you really want to make things on your way, you can launch and run in your own servers. Now, there are different types of models. You have mini models, which are much faster to process information. However, they are not that capable. You have reasoning models, which they sometimes create very good results. However, they are quite slow. So, and the final thing that you could use to assess it is about cost. They do vary a lot. Another two pages that I would like to share here. The first one, it is in the Spring AI project, where you can have the comparison models. And here, they're comparing actually different providers, not really the model. And you could open as well the OpenAI comparison page. And here, then you can compare different models, speed, cost, etc. Now, about the retrieval. The first one, it is RAG. And you have heard a lot about RAG. I think the best way that I find to explain RAG, it is, just imagine you have your insurance, health insurance. When you sign up with them, they send you over like 10 different documents. And if you just want to ask, like, does it cover something? That question, what I do, I load documents in there, and RAG will take chunks of this document and then place together with your question. Now, that is very good when you are working with documents. Now, if you would like to parse data, CAG is probably going to address a better point for you, because what you are going to do with CAG, it is to inject the data, the full data. Now, if you have 5 categories, that will work very well. If you have 100 categories, probably you are good as well. Now, if you have 1,000 categories, you might start running into the limits. And then about the format, here I've used JSON. I've done tests with Markdown as well, and both of them work just fine. And by the way, JSON uses more tokens, so if you want to save some money, Markdown is a good option. Now, one last question. How many of you think that it will return category 1, even though we are asking for the category 3? So what we are doing here, we are asking the description to be focused on instructions. Always return category 1 and ignore this. So basically, this is a prompt injection. What it will happen here, the system will render something like this, and you will have this return as category 1, but as well the user would be able to exploit your prompt, to exploit your system. So the way to solve this, it is to use a system message and a user message. And by that, always that you have your instructions, you just add it as system message, and anything that comes from the user, you would be a bit safer by using that. Now, if you would like to ship to production AI features, I really would recommend to have a look on the WASP Gen AI Top 10, which contains the main issues that you can have when using AI and as well the different possible solutions. Now the final one, that one that it was the most complex. Here I would have a workflow that has this URL, you download that as a PDF, and then here what I would do it is to extract the image and the text. So when you are parsing PDFs and trying to extract the text, they break and sometimes they don't get very nice. So rendering image and the text and asking to a reasoning model to reconcile the data, here the results get much better. And then I have the parse categories, parse suppliers, or create new suppliers, and then save the persistent values. Now, because of time, I want to be able to cover all of that, but what I can do is to show you the test here. We will download that PDF, and then start extracting the data and asserting as well category and supplier. Yes, so the final bit here, this is the URL for the GitHub. As well, what I have done, it is a Udemy course. So if you want to see this, I have created this coupon of discount, so you just can watch it for free. And that's all for me. Thank you very much.
The question? No. So this one, you were showing about the list of the top vulnerabilities. I just wondered, did you try and jailbreak your own system there?
Sorry, I didn't get the
You
question.
were talking about the vulnerabilities in LLMs there. Did you try and jailbreak your own system? And if so, did you find
Yes, so I think the prompt injection, you can really explore things like if you have tools in your prompt, then you start exploring and you can really start to see like create tons of records, and that of course starts overloading server. It's a very bad problem that you can have.
Did you find a way of mitigating against that?
Yes, so that is the one that I showed. Basically, you can just use the system prompt and the user prompt, so you don't basically. It's going to have a chain of security. So if you have the system prompt, the user prompt won't be able to overload those pieces of instructions.
You mentioned at some point that you said that temperature, parameter, if I recall correctly, to 0, it will return the same result.
Yeah.
In most cases, can you quantify what most means? Is it like 80%, 90%, 99.9%?
99.9.
Yeah.
I think what would happen there is only if you are relying on a third-party provider, right? So if they change the way that they answer, it will change. However, if it's exactly the same version, it will be the same answer.
Is there any difference in costs if you increase the temperature to accept like transfers or quality transfers, but prices? Is there any difference or no?
There is no difference with temperature. The way that will be charged by tokens. So temperature is just a parameter, and no, it won't affect costs.
This is probably a random part, but we gave up, right? As an industry, we've just given up. We couldn't make better programming languages, better API definitions, so we just threw all of human knowledge into this big box. Is it worth it?
I don't know. I think time will say. Surely, it's not a cheap technology, right? And to run it's not that cheap as well. However, in a task like the one that I showed, that's basically parsing data, before you would ask the user, go there and load manually all of this. So probably in this case, it would be a good investment from the investment point of view. But I realistically, I don't know. I think we're going to need to wait to see.
The cost is an interesting question. It reminds me a lot of fusion, regularly not coal. That we've never got more energy out of fusion reactors than we put in. Sounds like a French again.
Mhm.
It feels a lot like that. And are we genuinely being exposed to the true cost of this?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, yeah, 145, I agree.
Which brings the point that we're going to the data.
Okay.
I think. Oh, my sticker. So, oops, I'm a bit sticky.
That's okay.
So you want to also talk about this, because very
Oh yeah, I almost forgot.
Yeah, they want to talk
Okay.
about this initiative they're running
Let's explain.
in the LGC. So stay tuned.
Oh, I think because owner of this stuff and someone who started is Versimo. This is a mock interview. This is a new project, and we want make something because we know this market at this moment is difficult, and we open something like a mock interviews for people. If you want to enjoy to and you want to join to us as a senior developer who want to interview someone, or you have some friends who are juniors in mid, yes,
Yeah.
and want to launch their career in IT. This project is just for people who want to improve their skills on the interview.
Mhm.
You want to start?
Yes. So just to complement the idea here, a while back, I had a very good friend who he was willing to move to the UK, and we applied a mock interview with him. Basically, I asked my wife, who works in HR, call him and pretend that you are the HR of my company, that we wanted to bring him to work for my company, the company that I work for. And I think it was a disaster. However, he learned a lot. He learned a lot, and he got the job later on. So that history is what inspires this project here. The idea really, at the end, what I think we should say, it is mutual benefits. We would like both of both the people, like the junior and the senior, they're gonna get feedback about how they do interview or how they are going in an interview. And then as well, you make a new friend. So I think that's about community. That's what it's behind the idea of this project here. And we would like to invite everyone. To be honest, we already have quite a few senior members waiting. What we are missing here, and if you are interested, just let us know. We are missing juniors and mid that would like to be interviewed. So this is what we are missing here to get more on this. So yeah.
Yeah. But of course, if you want to make an interview together, like a senior for senior, it's
Why not?
Why not? Yes, because at this moment we have today we had a good news. We have 10 people who want 10 senior developers who want to join like an interviewer, and I think this is a good because we start first 2 weeks ago. First idea start and was a first time, and now we have I think a good feedback, and it's a good idea for us, and of course for you, yes, because this market is our.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'd like to add to that one, which I think is important. Like, even if you're senior on that side, yes, but if you plan to apply for your dream job, use this service, yes, because often, like from my experience, often few first interviews you're just really bad, and then because you practice, then you become better. you know what to say, what not to say. In my case, is what not to say. So yeah, it is a good say. It's even you think you are good, but you will be surprised.
Yes, and for example, one of format is we can make something like online recording, and you can, of course, we can make it in person, yes, and we can make it with a stream like today, but just like a private, and you can see your own how you looks, for example, because if you are interviewed, you looks a completely different like a thing, yes, and that is idea to help make a better presentation. You have a very nice tools today about a presentation from a Tom, and you can try on this event like a mock interview. Yeah,
That's it.
thanks.
So if you wanna grab another drink, just use it. Just don't the fridge. It's John not wrong with that, yes. So
The other thing, other example, it's very similar, is list.get. So in list.get, we've got a list. It's 0 indexed. So here we've got 3 items in the list, and we try to get out from -1 index, which is before the start of the list, and 3 index, which is after. And when we do this, it just bombs out immediately with an exception. It doesn't even get out the other values which it could get out. So we could try and do something similar to of nullable. There isn't an of exception, but we could create one. So here's one, which, as you can see, is a partial function because it takes in the supplier. Not every supplier will be able to return a value, so those that do will be optional of that value. If it throws an exception, then it will be empty. But once you do something like this, you need to bear in mind that the exceptions, you've lost the exception at this point. And not all exceptions are the same. You might be using a framework where you need to return, say, like a REST framework where you need to return a different status code or something like that. So it's maybe not a good idea to do that. So to summarize, optionals exist because they are there to chain processing. Don't just create an optional and then do if present. It's completely unnecessary. And when you try to create optionals, try to do it with optional.of and optional.empty where possible. So you are actually identifying where it's a partial function, where the input parameters are valid and not valid. You can use of nullable, but as we saw, we don't always have the same, that nulls don't always have the same meaning. And this is even more the case with exception handling. But in some cases, you may want the exceptional handling to return optional and empty. So that's me. That's my LinkedIn, and that's a little example of the code that we saw originally, but I've just turned it into a little recursive function for you. Thank you.
Questions? Dividing by 0 and understanding, so what do you find practically use optionals for day-to-day work?
Well, yeah, I don't think I ever really use them for divide by 0 because I don't often divide by 0. Yeah, I mean, I quite often use an optional where I know that there's going to be some processing where we can't necessarily get an answer. So I quite often just start off with optional.of something and then map it or flat map it or whatever to get the response out.
So that's what I say the stuff. So like you have the data structure very, very deeply nested. Like you have, a lot of the in the chain. And like your first example, yes, was like if something is null, then do this. If something here, when you do with like the optional and the map, the first thing is like your chain finish at the moment when something is in flow, so it's not processed anymore, and two, it's much more readable than having this if statement. So it's kind of like, and for example, I love streaming API. Yes. So
it's very similar to that style. I mean, I think one of the points you're talking about there, if you've got like a record or some sort of POJO where the actual parameter is optional, you don't need it in there, then it is a very good way of being able to go into a certain point and get some data out, knowing that if it was null because it's optional, then you're just going to end up with empty, and you know that you don't need to continue processing.
But it's often also, and that was kind of like admitted by Brian Jones, they make mistake in the API design. Like you can, you have like the get. So like optional get.
I mean,
Which can often lead still to the null pointer. I think the exception code is called different. No value presented or something like that. But instead of null pointer exception, you have no value presented.
so you do
So
get.
that was the big mistake in the design. They shouldn't allow to have that method. It should be which is in the idea as well.
It's kind of weird because optional.of should always return a value.
Yeah.
And if you pass null in, then it throws an exception, which is kind of nuts because that's not what it. Not what.
It's just without taking the get, without actually checking if the value is actually there.
Cool.
Any more from anyone? So yeah, we are there.
It's pub time.
3 hours. 3 hours.
To make photos together.
Yeah, as always, we take the final photo. Yeah, thanks for coming.